Happy holidays! I've got a gift for you. Buy 4 tarot readings or coaching session gift codes in any combination and you'll receive 2 additional gift codes too. So use all 6 codes for yourself or share them with friends and family as holiday gifts, stocking stuffers, or maybe even birthday presents. These don't expire, so you can feel free to use them and share them throughout the year. Merry Christmas, and thank you so much for being my friends. Hi there, Libra. This is your weekly reading for the week of December 28th to January 3rd. I apologize that these are late, but I decided to spend Saturday night in the emergency room. Long story short, it's fine. I was kind of suffering a few things, including exhaustion, something I could not understand. How it had happened to me? Well, it happened because I wasn't sleeping much. I was working all the time, doing all of my chores, trying to keep the house clean, taking care of my kids and everything else, and mind the command center. So I apologize for that. This will go into the first week of January, and then there will be the monthly readings that will be coming up, if not overnight, tomorrow. I don't know when those are going to be released or uploaded. I have no idea where they are right now. So the first card you've drawn is the 7 of Swords in reverse, and this is you feeling like somebody is getting away with something and never gets caught, yet you do the right thing. You know, you don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't do drugs, you don't do a damn thing, and yet your life is harder than all of the irresponsible people. And I know what that feels like. I'm going to tell you something. It's okay. I'm not ameliorating the way you feel. I am not trying to say that this nightmare is designed to punish you because the universe hates you. This is just simply a phase and a stage that is coming to a close. Sometimes the worst things happen and we think we would rather or ought to be crying like a victim, and then the mature mind steps in and says, I created it, this is my fault, this is my responsibility, yeah, these other people suck, it's all their fault, my family sucks, everybody sucks, and I'm just trying to live. And at the same time, you know, if you give in to the idea that everything sucks, pretty soon that's what you've got. And I could give you a lot of reasons why it isn't necessary to take it that far. I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't pamper yourself a bit with feeling sorry for yourself and making a mug of hot chocolate or watching your favorite movie and saying, F it, I'm not doing the dishes tonight. You do have to acknowledge your feelings because you are a human, and if you're not a robot, then that means you're wired to feel things. So the only way to misuse this energy is to blame other people for your problems. I think that's very, very easy to see why that is not typical Libra behavior. Like I said, Libras are typically concerned with everybody else. They do the right thing. They usually don't have an iota of evil in them, and they don't have temper tantrums. You know, a lot of it depends, of course, on, you know, your personal horoscope, your natal chart. But and then considering that genetic factors, you know, can make a lot of people pissed off. But just don't misuse this energy by taking it through the middle of the week and feeling like, well, you know, if my boyfriend hadn't, and if, you know, if my mother hadn't, and if I hadn't been distracted by all of these people that I gave birth to, I would have had 2 PhDs. That's not going to solve anything. I think that when we sit down and we're honest with ourselves, we can easily identify where we've erred. Now, I'm sure you're identifying that this has nothing to do with you at this time, that it probably is coming from an outside source. And if you're able to recognize that, and for most of you, that's how it will actually manifest. There's going to be a fraction of you, I'm thinking somewhere in the 10% range, who are able to say, no, it's not my fault because, yeah, he's a cheater. And, even though we got together by cheating, now he's cheated. And I have been overwhelmed with this idea he's going to cheat on me again, even though I'm a cheater too. And it's been 15 freaking years. At that point, I want to hit you over the head and say, look, let's see if we can cause frontal lobe damage so that you become nice again. But I think that for the most part, these are going to be extraneous ideations. And these will be you taking your negative thinking a little too far. So, we could veer off in one trajectory or another. On the one hand, we could get you being too hard on yourself. On the other hand, you will blame everybody else for this. Of course, it's all their problems. You'll start to blame your nieces, nephews, cousins, uncles, brothers, mothers, fathers, relatives you never met. And, if you've ever seen a person do this, you'll understand why it is decidedly much more unattractive on a Libra, because you guys are very peace-loving. I've told you examples before. I can only even think of 2 instances where it's like, okay, these people are just effed. There's just so much wrong. They can't be normal anymore. And this is where we have to kind of accept, people's inherent or otherwise ingrained tendencies, where we could say, look, you can't trace that to a genetic mutation, my dear, because this is you, but I think that the majority, if not, we'll call it 90%. I like to bet 90% of you are going to be the ones feeling like, damn, it really, this is how the year's going out. I'm feeling this way again. Put yourself in a positive place and keep yourself there, because when the 7 of Swords approaches in reverse under these astrological influences, the danger is that you could get stuck there and have anxiety issues. You could become somewhat depressive, affective, where you could save yourself at this point. And I'm not into drugs, and I'm not into even prescription drugs. Don't go there because you don't need it. There are many instances where it's appropriate, and where a doctor realizes I'm not going to be able to get my patient to do crap. This person is not going to listen, and they might shove a pill in your face or up your ear, and call it good. But try to avoid that, because these kinds of anxieties are really pointless. They don't solve problems. Worrying never saved anybody on the Titanic, which really wasn't a Titanic. It was the sister ship. A lot of you history buffs know that one already, but I'm trying to tell you, even at times that you could panic, you're going to sink because you forgot to swim because you were busy panicking. So let it go a little bit and be easier on yourself. It's not necessary to carry this energy into the year, so just don't do it. Don't do it. On Tuesday, we have the Temperance card in reverse, which is, again, kind of an indication that if you don't get a grip on this, that you will end up with some kind of a depressive disorder that the doctor or clinician is going to identify as some other problem, like a histrionic disorder. It could get really interesting really fast. So pull up and out, because the Temperance card is very, very easy to handle. So I can give you the basic hints before I give you the astrology. When you're in this kind of a frame of mind, or if this is someone close to you, then we sure as hell don't want anybody drinking alcohol. Obviously, drugs never saved anybody's life if they weren't life-saving drugs. Doing recreational drugs is kind of a difficult subject for most people, because most people don't do this. But cannabis type recreational drugs I have issues with for a lot of different reasons, but I wish it were legalized for medical use. And really, honestly, it's because I don't like to see people drinking. I never met a violent stoner, if you know what I mean. But then there are marginal people, and I'm not saying that to be offensive. If you have a relative who has drug issues, I have relatives that have had issues. And I one of them, I never know if he's still having the issue, but these types of people that would do chemical drugs, like what are the kind of problems we have? And don't ask me how people end up this way, because you'd never get me to do anything like that. You'd have to threaten me with a knife and then I'll kick the shit out of you. People who do meth and speed and whatever these other things are. I don't know if crack is the thing anymore, if it's the same thing. But there are things that you could really do that do screw up your mind permanently, and those drugs are those. They kill brain cells, not even by the thousands. It's some outrageous number that I can't even grasp it. And so you meet them, and even when they're off of these drugs, they're never the same. They're kind of effed up permanently. And I've seen people with this problem. So if you have somebody in your life that's having an issue, hopefully it isn't a major issue. Hopefully, Jesus Christ, it wouldn't be one of your kids or anything. But the Temperance card is asking you to avoid mind-altering substances. Please, you obviously, it's your life, and my job is just to stand here and freaking talk, and people click on buttons, and I do it because I feel like it. Sometimes I don't know why I'm doing it, but with that said, the Temperance card will also indicate that there could be something out of balance in your relationship. And if you are a person who's in relationship, and if it's a serious committed relationship or a marriage, then there is something that's out of whack. And I don't know if it's you or if it's them, honestly. I'd have to listen to you to know, the etiology, or to get down deep to figure out where these problems coming from. But the issue with the Temperance card is we could actually, and New Year's Eve, right? Drown our sorrows or some crap, or Jesus, maybe the disgusting pimp drug dealer, and pushing chemicals and jacking up people's lives. If there was a hell, that's where I'd like them to go. But if you've ever met a person who has done that, and even though they've stopped, you can recognize the brain damage, because it's become almost an affectation, and you could see that their thinking isn't what we consider to be normal, or even a baseline. Their own baseline is way off. So don't engage in it. If you're going to toast the new year with a glass of champagne or something, and you're not having these issues, then I would just watch for people with those issues in your life, because it really could be a person who smokes cigarettes and they haven't figured out how bad this is for them. I invite them to come to Idaho to see all the people dragging around their oxygen tanks. And that's unfair, because some people really have emphysema that is not based on smoking related lung damage, okay? But remember, Temperance card is saying, and there's a few indications of this, and that's why I'm bringing it up, handle the core issue. That's very easy to locate if you're well. What I mean by well is that you don't have a serious mental disease where you can't understand, comprehend, locate any source of anything. But for most of us walking around with the typical brain damage from anything from a car accident to, a barroom brawl, or, anything else, that there are ways to deal with this, and you don't have to internalize them until they become a real chemical depression. Okay, so you don't want to end up in that state. And I know it sounds like a downer, and it's not going to be if you just handle this stuff, or it could be, like I said, somebody near you, and it could even be that they've got problems with boundaries, and or you guys are just not seeing eye to eye. In other words, balanced. And these are not things that you need to go ghetto and punch each other in the face, or, please. I know people that have done things like that. It really isn't necessary. And so when people don't get along, I'm the first one to say, hey, divorces are designed for people like you. Right now, this is when it needs to not be present. Or how about don't be in a relationship if you go crazy violent? And that's really not like a normal Libra trait, okay? But, there are ways to avoid this 5 of Wands, which actually isn't what the really problem is. We're coming off of the Sun in Capricorn sextiling Neptune in Pisces, Capricorn being your solar 4th house of home and family. And so that's why I'm saying be careful, because it could really be a situation going on with somebody close to you and or in the same home. So if you cohabitate, if you're married, if you have a roommate, could... where we're not getting along. And I'm not sure which one of you it is. Maybe we could say 50%, we could allocate it until people get real and figure out what the real issues are. If you're in a relationship with somebody who's controlling, jealous, possessive, frightening you, it isn't ever going to get any better, because these are very, very difficult behaviors because most of the time this is absolutely a choice. We could get a predisposition even genetically or culturally, and it could even be freaking, ancestral DNA. But these are usually very difficult situations. The people are actually the problems themselves. They have problems that are far too deep to even procreate with. So if you're beyond that, then you have to think, how do I save my children from watching this behavior? So it isn't as heavy for all of you, but there are indications that for the majority, there are going to be issues very similar to this. It doesn't mean that all of you are going to be having relationships with people that are crazy jealous, going to slap you on the back of the head and pop you in the face with a dish or a cup or a bottle. This isn't really what I'm talking about, unless that is your situation, and only you would know. Mercury in Capricorn squaring Mars in Libra, your solar first house, is really just trying to start a fight freaking at your house. Do what I do. Just live by yourself or with your children if they're normal. I've got a really good family, so I think at least my nuclear family, which has become me and the 3 boys. But, sometimes we have to make drastic changes in order to put space and time and even physical distance between people that are no longer healthy. And if you're at that place, you need to think about that. Here on Wednesday, Venus in Scorpio semi-squares Pluto in Capricorn, Scorpio being your solar, where am I at? I'm lost on my own chart here. Your solar second house of income, you could be feeling like you can't figure out where is this problem that makes you feeling financially unstable. Well, with Venus in Scorpio semi-square to anything, it's kind of hard to figure out where it is, but a semi-square is famously famously infamous for making it difficult to locate the location, the source of the problem. I can tell you with the second house, at least in solar astrology for the purpose of this kind of a reading, that you need to watch your spending in the future. Get these problems ameliorated. If your student loan debt is choking you, have it renegotiated as soon as possible. Usually if you're that far behind, they'll make you do something like 3 payments. And what is it like? I think I know what at least FAFSA it is, that you then make 3 regular payments at a minimum of $100. And I just coached somebody through this. And then you can then ask for a reduced payment. Then they'll hear you out on it. It's just basically their system, the way it works, to get a person on track to see if they can trust them, right? So the spending really does have to do with objects that you didn't need to begin with. Venus and Scorpio in the second house will do this. You feel like you must have them. I'm not one of these people like this. So the last luxury I bought myself was a crazy laptop stand and it was like, I think $6 to just put it at a bizarre angle that only I needed for my own purposes of, my animations and stuff. And other than that, so often we fall into the trap. And you'll meet people that have the most curious problems with this because they need a bunch of expensive things. They need an expensive house. They will work themselves to death and put their kids in daycare rather than staying home to make the situation safer and more appropriate for their children. And they have to have the shiny thing, or to force, the wife to buy them a set of very expensive golf clubs for a birthday, or the wife wants jewelry and things. And I'm thinking, can you people just get one of you at home to actually raise the children? I'm one of those people, that even to this day, I have a 22-year-old, I have a 17 about to be 18-year-old, those 2 about to be in college at the same time, and a 15-year-old. And guess where I'm at? Home, because I would rather just go without than to let somebody else raise my kids. And I ran a daycare, so I can tell you that there are a lot of reasons why it's just not good for the kids. I mean, then they become either detached from their mother, or they bond differently than they should, because really it's designed to bond with mom. And in a perfect world, that would happen. And if you're like, you don't get it, Rita, my job is at a convenience store. His job is, a mechanic, and he's part-time. If we don't both work, we're going to die. But then I'm thinking, who's watching those kids though? Who's got the kids? Unless it's a relative, you're paying for somebody somewhere. These are different ways to avoid these problems with Venus semi-squaring. And in the future, remember, these are not just energies that come and go. I'm not being leisure because I felt like it. It was because I was in the hospital. I was pissed. So Now I'm supposed to keep myself from being exhausted, and I'm going to be up until the wee hours again. So Venus moving into Sagittarius, I think, will calm a lot of this down because it'll put it more in a practical communication approach in your solar third house of Sagittarius, which will help you negotiate things, even if they become debts that are just insurmountable. You will have a good opportunity, at least 3 during this period of Mercury's retrograde cycle, to get these things handled, or to at least get a handle on what needs to be handled. Also, the Five of Wands here could indicate that the struggle is internal. And maybe you're like, no, this is all my fault. I cheated with the cheater, married the cheater, he cheated, and now I'm terrified and I'm on Xanax 24 hours a day. Well, these internal struggles need to be brought forth. Talk to somebody about it. Talk to a trusted friend, a trusted advisor. Talk to your clinician, your therapist, your shrink, your guru. Get this out in the open. Frickin' blog it on the internet. Put it out there. Get it out of your body. Some people can identify with having weird family members who they for some reason feel like they need to hide their every sin, and then they get weirder and weirder. Don't be that way. Get yourself in a position where you can get help. That also means that you need to be honest about what you think the issues are. Honest, what you think the issues are, not what you want them to be, not what you were told they are, but just play by play. And then the person directing the interactions will be able to understand your situation and help you see where the problems are. Don't turn it into one of these battles that makes you angry at the world and angry at other people, or punching somebody in the face, or again back to the violence, right? Just get it out of your body, keep yourself under control, and see that there is help on the way. On Thursday we have the Five of Cups, and this is a card that has you again somewhat melancholy. It's not necessary. I respect your feelings, feel your feelings, but you need to not stay there. And I think that you're going to pull yourself right back up. And I believe, honestly, that the universe knows what we need at every given moment, and that at every moment when we're experiencing something even as stupid or heinous as it could be, that it is meant to happen at that time for a specific reason. Maybe we won't understand even in this lifetime, but most of us who are conscious and aware know how to understand that we're in control of our lives. No one controls it. Whatever situations have occurred, aside from dreaded disease, unless it's something that came because of a drug issue or because of what it reminds me of, unfortunate Pamela Anderson. I actually really like her because of a tattoo. She ends up with a very complex illness. And sometimes we're like kicking ourselves in the ass because we know, well, if I hadn't been an alcoholic, this wouldn't have happened. Or if I wouldn't have smoked, this wouldn't have happened. But at this point, this is where we've got to say, well, pretty much that's enough, because the buck stops here. At this point, if you're feeling depressed or you're blaming yourself, even for spending too much money at Christmas or something, and forgetting what, the real reason for the season is for you. For me, it's a particular birthday. It's Jesus' birthday in my world. So we make a cake, we blow out a candle, and we enjoy this moment. And token gifts for each other, and that's it. Because it really isn't about the commercialism in my world. That's where people miss out. Their kids are flooded with toys, but they've got brats. Or their kids are flooded with every accoutrement, and they have horrible behavior. And, they're not being parented at all. They're just being thrown items at. And then the parents will say, well, I didn't have these things as a child. I'm giving them what I didn't have. It's like, whoa, you better give that kid an attitude and a haircut, because right now it looks like the service is what's going to correct this. And I'm not pushing the military, although I respect it. And I adore everybody who serves us in so many other countries around the world. God bless you all. But, regardless of what the location, the beginning, the problem of this thing is, think about it, put it on paper if you have to, if you don't have or can't afford, to talk to a behavioral professional or anybody else in that kind of realm. Then sit down with a pen and paper and write down what the problem is as you see it, remove the emotion, and then write down in another column the hypothetical solution as you see it. Now, if you could look at it and see and say to yourself, yeah, I doubt a marriage counselor would say, well, sounds like he just needs to do what you told him to do and that's it. No, because that's not what you're going to be told. Then you can start to analyze it for yourself. Now, I will tell you that Venus in Sagittarius, again, your solar third house of communication, sesquisquares Uranus in Aries, your solar seventh house of your marriage and relationships. And some of you may be like, well, he or she just needs to do what I told him to do. Screw you, you cleaned the toilet wrong. Jesus, well, That's really not the way that a marriage works in my world, but that's where we have to understand that the sesquisquare is going to draw attention to what action needs to be taken in order to resolve the conflict. That is the message of this angle, of this aspect, excuse me. So with that said, remember that just resolve it. Look, how about we just even stop discussing it? Screw it. Whatever it is, whatever happened, however it happened, it doesn't matter, because at this point, the resolution is what needs to be put into effect, and that is the way out of the the sesquisquare. On Friday, we've got the Two of Wands, and this is a card that indicates finally, here you go, now you've got it. You see that even if you don't have everything you need to create the solution, you're beginning to get the concept that needs to be implemented to get it back under control and to feel that you do control the situation. That's what the symbolism of this person holding the earth is, what it means. Getting control of the situation again. That doesn't mean controlling other people. That doesn't mean controlling their attitudes, their behaviors, or whatever. Now, if they're doing something that is a negative behavior, quite obviously, it makes sense that if you married a smoker and they promised to not smoke, that they would have to pony up to their end of the agreement at some point. Nobody likes to be around smokers. I can guarantee you that, because I've been one. Now, when it comes to the idea that if you have decided over and over, because there's something really wrong with you and you think everybody else has to correct their issues before you will correct yours, you probably need to get outside help. And I tell people, even when they're in marriages that obviously need to end in divorce, it's better for everybody. The younger the kids are, I tell them, the better. Because if it's all your husband or all your wife's fault, I'm pretty sure that there are things that you could have done in the meantime. With my last marriage, I guarantee you that by the time I was able to get my husband to, and he understood, he needed to get some help. But we needed some medical evaluations as well. I had sworn I wasn't going to pick up my phone and dial that number. I said, and if you want to stay married to me, you make the call. You go to the doctor. You figure out what the hell it is. Then tell them everything you want about me. Tell them I'm a bitch. Tell them I'm nuts. Go ahead and say it all. Then they will bring me in eventually. This is the way it goes. They will bring me in, and then they will decide what the problem is, and I'll defer to them. I'm one of them, so of course I would know that's how it goes. And, the first meeting was absolutely fine, and then the doctor did some tests thinking he had a head injury, and my ex-husband really was dropped on his head as a child. He wasn't a cesarean baby or anything. He was born the old-fashioned way, but got dropped later from a high chair or something. And then he ruled that out and thought that it was a different disorder. And after that, when he was referred to the psychiatrist, he wouldn't go. I'm like, there we go. Freckle past a hair. It's time for a divorce. Now, I should have done that sooner, but I was so mired in some other issues we were having, which really related to his orientation, that I was like, I can't, there's no way to even fix this because I'm done. And I had done it so well that it was very difficult to undo. So if you're in a situation where you're already, like, let's say you're dating, I'm going to be addressing these in a different product later, but that's also free and just out there thrown to the wind. But if you're in a relationship that's relatively new and you're in a relationship with somebody that meets the criteria that you can already tell, or somebody in your life, your family, your world has said, there is something, this isn't even right. The whole family is terrified of him or her, or freaking you. Have you ever been one of those people or been around one of those? Because you wouldn't admit it, right? Let me rephrase, Freudian slip. Have you ever been around those people whose entire family is afraid of them? Whoa, they'll talk about them behind their back, but not to their face. I'm the type that's like, bullshit, let me just tell you exactly what's going on. But this is the time when manning up to it, facing up to it, saying, maybe you do have an out of control relative in your life. And you have to say, you know what? I'm sorry. I don't want to use the word. I'd insult female dogs all over the planet. But you need to get a handle on yourself and get this under control, because the rest of us can't take it. And that might be where you're at. With this kind of situation with the 7th house, it would have to be somebody close to you. So it could be your child and show up in the 7th house. And it could be, especially if you spend time with them or their families, definitely shows up in the 7th house. It could be you and your relationship, obviously. Maybe nobody has helped you say the words, you want a divorce, don't you? While they nod their head, where you just realize, look, I just can't be with this person. I was waiting until my son was 16, maybe you're thinking, so that I could safely be able to remove him, or, any number of issues. Or even if you're able to say to yourself, Rita, I have not wanted to admit this to myself, that I'm just so unhappy with the direction my life has taken. Do something about it. If you're like, no, I could never leave this person because, well, Well, look, that's not the way to be healthy. If being in a relationship to stay with that person that you feel sorry for makes you feel like crap, I think it's going to take more than a couple of whacks with these two wands this dude is holding to get you to understand it, that it doesn't solve anything. It doesn't solve anything. And when we even enable people's bad behaviors by saying, well, I know, yes, he slapped me and I just, it's okay because he never does that. Well, wow, contact, made physical contact with you, and that's okay. Or your wife smacked you. And look, I know that that's somewhat romantic and, and Gone with the Wind. Okay. But in real life, we've got a major issue. And I remember knowing that it was the beginning of the end for one of my ex-boyfriends when he flipped me off during a game of Monopoly. And some of you know that story. I was like, oh, really? And then he went and made up for it by bringing me a present. And I even was talking about it with somebody recently. There was lingerie in the bag. I'm like, wow, so you F me off and then you want, whatever, you get it. Mercury enters Aquarius at this point, your solar fifth house. And now that's where the Mercury retrograde will begin. So there's going to be an issue that probably should be related to something romantic or within your family, within your siblings, your children, your cousins, your neighbors. It could be anybody who's like around that home base. And if you're dating, of course, that would be a romantic situation. That would not be the marriage house, okay? Or the marriage and the close committed might as well be married partnership or cohabitation that's now become a, marriage de facto or something like that. That's the seventh house. So just take note that it's probably not the best time to initiate dialogue unless somebody's going to get hurt, killed, maimed, and or you're going to risk that kind of an explosion. Saturday, we have the Knight of Wands in reverse, and this is kind of an indication that it isn't time to initiate any new beginnings or even new endings, which obviously, students of the Tarot, you just saw why. The other thing I want to say about it, though, is that you could have a person who loses their temper. You could have a cheating spouse or I'm not saying all of them are. The ones that you're aware of, not the psycho, everybody's cheating kind of crazy person thing. I'm talking where you're already aware of this and you're like, yeah, I know that this person's lying. Well, yeah, they are. Okay. So think about what you're going to do with this because we can't change the Knight of Wands. A leopard doesn't change its spots. We could dye it, dip it in paint, and that hair is going to grow out again. I have to say the words that if the problem is you need to recognize that you're the only one that can solve this. You can't say things like, well, if my wife wasn't so fat, or, if my wife would go get butt injection implant, whatever. I understand that that is sensitive to people. Usually we find women that are like, my ass is flat. I got to do something. Like, what? You want to end up a victim? But you can't say things like, if she would do this or he would do that, then I would respond like this. That's not going to change anything because the Knight doesn't change. And in this sense, also, it means that this isn't the time to initiate any serious discussions. This is just really time to give you, during the Mercury retrograde, this is absolutely your fodder. And this will be present all through January. This will be actually retrograde from January 5th to the 25th, and then we'll be in the post-Mercury retrograde shadow phase until about the middle of February. So anytime after the 25th, I would like to see people kind of wait, get away from the bookend dates, which are easy to find on the internet, before you start to execute anything major. Also, Mars will move into Scorpio here on Sunday. So apropos for the death card, because with the death card, of course, we know that transmutation, transformation, transcending this situation are really like shove yourself into some cocoon and come out a butterfly, whatever works. Something has to end before a beautiful beginning can occur. Sometimes this relates to just like, we begin the week with an obviously mercurial and communicative card, okay? A card of the intellect, a card of the thinking, a card of the planning. Anything that refers to Mercury is planning, organizing yourself before taking action. So when Mercury's hanging out 3 times closer than he's supposed to be, this is when we're supposed to really pay attention to what these situations are. This last full moon on Christmas should have helped you understand where the issues are, because it was, I believe, in Cancer, and that would have been your solar 10th house. So something here that could be combined with your career. Maybe some of you have finally realized you got to stay home and raise your kids because this isn't going well. Then it could be that your career, your job is what's frustrating you. Well, I know one person at least that I had to just tell, no, that's not a good idea. That's suicide. And I would commit harakiri if I told you that this timing was good. And I meant it. And so here you may come to the understanding that this job just doesn't resonate with you, and that the partnership or business partnership or even that part of the relationship, that your jobs cause some other problems somehow individually. Well, then it's time to think about this, because the universe is saying that you absolutely do need to do something about this, but that this is not the time. What is it time for? It is time for planning, decision making, being honest with yourself, looking at the mirror, telling yourself you love yourself, but that changes need to occur if any of what I described relates to you. And you can hate me for it, because I'm not your wife, your girlfriend, or your sister. I'm a soul relative to you, right? We're here together at this moment because it was destined. You're getting this message because it was necessary and appropriate, and to whatever end. Okay, you could say, Rita, I hate your guts because you were right on everything. I get that a lot. Trust me, I don't like it. I don't like it, especially when there's negative news, like something pretty serious, like a divorce that needs to happen, a cheating spouse who needs to be kicked out of the atmosphere, but really don't kick them. And, sometimes looking at this stuff, it really just does require somebody else to step in and say, this is what it is. This isn't healthy. You've already tried A, B, C, and D. If you think that you're going to change him now or her, it isn't going to happen. And we should never end up with people, right, that we feel like we need to fix or upper. They're not real estate. They're not houses. You can't flip them. You can only get rid of them at some point, but also people are inherently who they are. If there's something really wrong with them that they need to get some counseling or some guidance or coaching on, that's one thing. Some people don't even know how out of control they are. I hear stories about people going to different people's houses or things that they heard and saw. And it's not just with us, the little people, it's with the celebrities that I know, the ones I work with that can tell me crazy crap that might as well be as ghetto as something you'd see on the South Side, and or something that only happens in LA. And I'm like, whoa, okay, so that's interesting, but did anybody notice that this was crazy making already? So whatever it is, you'll get the indications. If you're still trying to put your finger on it, like if you're one of the people, there is again, I'd have to look at your natal chart to see how much of the Venus, Scorpio, semi-square Pluto, and Capricorn would have been affecting you, because putting your finger on it isn't easy, especially if you really don't think you did anything wrong, or if you really need somebody else to listen to this, somebody who's impartial. That's why therapy, couples therapy, pre-marriage counseling is what I advise everybody to do. That's just basically out there it's not to cause problems. And I tell people to do about a year before they're getting married, go have at least one session of pre-marriage counseling, for people that if you're getting married and you just met and in a year you're getting okay, there's probably an issue there. Unless it's all, hunky-dory. And again, somebody who's specially trained to help you sort out those issues will know how to identify it. Doesn't mean that they're brilliant, and it doesn't mean that it's always going to work, because they only have enough information as they get from the two people who are obviously going to be biased. But there's certainly ways to work with this energy. Or if you're like, Rita, I'm the one that tells you that I thought everything was great 2 years ago. Now this is freaking nightmare material. I didn't know he was a lunatic. I can't even go out alone because he thinks I'm cheating. Well, that's a very difficult problem because it requires intervention by somebody, whether it's a relative, whether it's one of their relatives, somebody that they trust. And often people have to go to various therapists until they find somebody that they actually feel comfortable with, that both of them do. One woman might be like, I'll only have couples counseling with a woman. The guy's like, hey, wait a second. I want to see a male so that they're not biased toward you. They're not biased. Some of them are, but not all of them. So maybe you need to get couples therapy from a couple. Trust me, they exist out there. They're usually married or otherwise partnered up or committed. I don't even know what words people use for this anymore. And they will help you with this, because then that way nobody feels on the spot, and then they think that they're best friends and they want to go to dinner together, and that'll not happen because we don't date or go to dinner with our therapists. But what I want you to understand is that there is obviously a great transformation taking place. There are some issues that you're feeling like somebody else is getting away with something. They're getting away with murder. They've got it easier than you. And then there's going to be a group of you who are either cheating on your significant other or they are cheating on you. And you need to identify whether that was a precept of this relationship, if it was already in place, if there were things that somehow were okay. And then they might be the ones that actually would say, well, we got together cheating. What'd you think? I wasn't going to cheat? Heinous things that we know happen. So think about this, because also there's the indication that substance abuse could be the way that somebody could take an out. And it could be that the substance abuse is part of this problem. And sometimes people are abusing food. There's other things that we could abuse. Sleep, we could abuse all kinds of things. Keep in mind that some of this energy is going to shift to your fifth house, and then it will come back in before it passes over and goes back in direct into Aquarius, where it will stay. So you have plenty of time to work with this. There is no rush unless somebody is safe or is not safe and is in danger and that kind of thing, or if you're in danger of being abused, physically smacked in the head or something. But most of the emphasis here is on you taking care of yourself. That at the end of the day, even if you're alone and that you feel in romantic situations that this isn't what you intended, maybe it's what needs to happen until you rediscover yourself and figure out what it is that you really want to experience in a relationship, so that you can more appropriately find your best friend, who really would be the best relationship partner ever. When people have been together for many years and they're very best friends, we usually see them getting married, or they cohabitate and create a common law marriage. And then it's like, well, why didn't you just go get a marriage and a piece of paper? And they'll say things to you like, well, we didn't want to blow that money. I think is ridiculous anyway. And we figured out we weren't going to ruin it now. If it's been working for a decade, we're not getting married. It's fine. Anyway, I'll be talking to you soon. Make good choices. Make sure that if you have a substance abuse issue, that you contact your local substance abuse hotlines. They usually are found in the front of your phone book, or you can call 211 from any phone. I believe it has to be a landline. I don't know if they've ported over to numbers that you can dial from a cell phone, but you can ask around or Google it on the internet. What's the local 211 landline number in your area? And they will help direct you to get yourself well. Never be embarrassed to talk about it, because it's only a problem and it's only to your detriment when you let it take control of you. If you're afraid to talk to people about it, there are plenty of people that want to help you, and they're out there to counsel you, to give you advice on these matters. It isn't easy to get out of a pit like that. I've seen people this way. I know what that looks like. So just remember that if you're feeling like, I'd rather drink all night long, do drugs, whatever, well, you can avoid it for 24 hours, but that doesn't change the fact that the stars keep moving. God bless, and I'll be talking to you soon.